And with that, we are alive. It's Wednesday. Welcome, everybody, to the Light 'em Up Lounge. As every week, I'm delighted, I'm honored, I'm very happy to welcome all of you here at the lounge, ready to rock and roll, kick things off with another inspiring interview with an inspiring guest. Family, legacy, history. We'll explore the history of Cuba, Tampa. We'll talk about everything that this gentleman and his family have built over generations, decades, and centuries. So without further ado, I'm privileged and honored to welcome today's guest, Arnold Serafin of Serafin de Cuba and Flor de Tampa, here with us at the Light 'em Up Lounge. Arnold, what a pleasure. It's been a couple of weeks in the making and planning, and finally here we are. I'm really happy and glad that you could take the time, spend time with us here today to explore history, what has been, what is, and what will be, to look at the cigar industry in general, all the recent developments. I'm very blessed to see all of you here joining us via Zoom, friends, family, special guests. The professor is here with us, back on track after he smoked his first couple of cigars after a month of break. Jose, pleasure to see you. For everybody joining us via Facebook, it's always a privilege and a pleasure to have you with us. Please make yourselves heard. Put your questions underneath the live stream. I know you've all been curious and you've been waiting for this to plaster Arnold with all your questions. So put them into the comments for everybody here. Chime in, make yourselves heard. But without further ado, Arnold Serafin here at the Light 'em Up Lounge. It's brilliant to have you. Thank you so much for joining us.
Reinhard, thank you for having me. It's an honor to be on the show.
Well, the honor is all yours, as I said. Arnold, you truly look back on a very, very particular and longstanding family history and legacy. The Serafin family, originally from Cuba, the central region of Las Villas, you've established yourself and your business very successfully in the Tampa area, and still to this very day, you're working on growing and perpetuating the family legacy, building it from a local family business into an international brand. And a lot of people have on the radar what you've been doing so successfully throughout the decades. Before we start and explore the history further, I'm curious, with the rich history and legacy of your family, what's home to you? Where do you feel your happy place is, and what does home mean to you?
Reinhard, that's a great question. Thank you very much for everything you just said. Home to me is actually here in the Tampa area. I mean, I love the history here. I love the culture. This is an area that over 100 years ago, Mr. Ybor, he came here with a cigar factory, which namingly sake was El Príncipe de Gales, which is one of the cigars that we make today. And, because of that brand, he started a whole thing here, a whole movement. Many followed. And, for the next 100 or so years, Tampa became an epicenter of cigar making. And, back then, of course, everything came from Cuba, the tobacco, the cigar makers and everything. So it was a whole different world. But I'm just honored that I stay, I continue the tradition here in this area. And I love the Tampa area. To me, it's home.
Good to hear. Well, Tampa, as you said, looks back on a tremendous history in the premium cigar and tobacco world. One of the very special places, and it has to be named, I would say, in one sentence, with all the other great places of origin, of manufacturing, even, and of cigar history. Arnold, can you walk us a little bit through some of those early days of the Serafin family, the Cuban origin and history?
Sure.
How eventually the family made its way to Tampa, where you still operate so very successfully to this day?
Absolutely. I'll even step back another generation. My great grandfather, he was from the Canary Islands in Spain. And that was for a long time, it was a big cigar making, tobacco growing and cigar making area. And he settled in Cuba, Pinar del Rio. He was there for a short while. And then he went to central Cuba, to Las Villas. And he had his own shade farm, that he operated there. And my grandfather, he grew up alongside him learning, the industry of growing tobacco eventually he had his own little factory in central Cuba. And then years later, my father and I, we decided to come here to the Tampa area. We lived in New Jersey originally, and we wanted to come to make cigars again. And there was no other better place than Tampa. We had the Cuban history here, the tobacco history, everything. And this is where we decided to come and start it over again.
What does it mean for you when you look back on that family history with these rich roots that run deep? I mean, when you look back on all these accomplishments, all the ups and downs, because let's be honest, there's so many other families and so many other legacies in history, it has never been easy, huh? And we constantly face those hurdles and challenges, and you need to overcome them. What does it mean to you looking back on all of this?
Well, it's funny because, every day I talk to people from everywhere that come and visit the shop, and, a lot of people from different parts of the world, Europe even, obviously. And to me, it's just, it's my family history, and I'm proud to continue to do it, whether it's here or in Cuba or wherever the revolution or whatever might take us, right? I'm just honored that I can continue to make cigars and do what my family's been doing for the past 100 years. Like you said, through turbulent times, politics, you name it, it's just, it's, I guess, riding the wave, like they say. We just got to keep it going. But to me, I'm just honored to be able to carry the legacy. And now my son, he's the 5th generation, and he's still doing it. And he's actually playing a very active role in the business now. So I'm really honored to have him on board as well.
Speaking of, the business side of things for you has multiple pathways and multiple layers. You do operate a successful retail business. You have a beautiful little lounge. So you still carry the flag, and you continue the tradition of Tampa cigar manufacturing. You have one in your hand. Talk a little bit about that and all the different intricacies and layers of the family business. Sure.
I mean, I always like to joke about it. There's the big cigar makers, and then there's me. I'm the smallest one around, right? I'm basically the I always say the smallest cigar manufacturer. But yeah, we're a small family running business. Now we have a sales team of one person who's a dear friend of mine and Jose's, which is Rich Myberg. And Rich has been on board now for a couple months, and he's taking the brand to several parts of the United States, and I'm very honored that he's doing that. So we're getting our footprint. He came here to visit me recently, and he said, Arnold, you've done a great job putting your brand out there and getting it in people's hands. But now, in order for us to take this to the next step, to the next level, we need to expand. And I said, well, you're the man for the job. And he's out there hitting the pavement. As a matter of fact, I think he's up in like Tennessee today. So he's been doing a really great job doing that in the last couple months. So I'm eager to see where we'll be by the end of the year. But it seems like things are going very well, and I'm excited. I'm really excited. But to answer your question, yeah, we do everything from retail to the web. Of course, we have our own little website, and we ship cigars all over the country, Europe even. So I'm honored to get our cigars to the people that enjoy it, put it in their hands.
Rich is actually joining us over on the Facebook live stream, so he's with us.
Oh, is he? That's excellent.
Shout out to Rich Myberg, and many thanks for joining us. Well, with all these different elements of the business and the industry, what do you mostly spend your time on these days? What are the things that bring the greatest joy to you, even, and what is it that you find so tempting, so energizing still about the premium cigar world? Because we all talk about the passion, we all talk about the love and how special this industry is, but when you operate in it and you see all the different things going on behind the scenes, it can change the dynamic a little bit, and it changes your perspective on the industry. So on the one hand, where do you spend most of your time on, but what is it truly that still gets you up every day and makes you feel energetic and happy and enthusiastic about this truly mesmerizing and fascinating world?
Well, I mean, I'm going to borrow a line from my friend Carlito Fuente, and I think it's when he always says it's not about the cigars, it's about the people. And I think he's right 100%, 110% about that, because to me, what I find the most enjoyable is to hear my customers, my friends the customers are by default, they become an extension of your family. So when I wake up in the morning and I see, folks smoking cigars all over the country and writing to me and telling me, hey, what a great cigar. I really enjoyed it. And, that level of communication that we established with the people, to me, that's priceless. And for them I mean, they have a million options to choose from, and they smoke mine. I mean, I'm humbled. It's an honor. And to me, that's the biggest part of this is having that connection with the people, with the clients. I enjoy that the most, I guess, to be honest with you.
Was there a time in history when you grew up around the family, everybody involved with tobacco history and cigar manufacturing, where you felt this is probably not for me? I'd rather pursue other endeavors, or was it always clear that one way or another, one day you would end up in the industry?
That's a great question. To be honest with you, Reinhard, I never thought about doing anything else in my life. I guess it's because of the passion and the love that I have for the industry. I mean, I remember in one of the recent shows that I did, I told the story about when I went to Cuba. It was back in 1993, and I went to visit my grandfather, who was, he was already kind of sick and ailing health, but he was still making his own cigars. And I said, hey, Grandpa, I said, I'd love to take some of these cigars back to Miami. And he said, sure, hey, no problem. Hold on a second. He gave me a little bit of money. He said, go see my, his neighbor. He said, go over there and pick up some tobacco. And between him and my uncle, they rolled about 50 or 60 little, like Marevas, small cigars. Some of the best cigars I ever had. And that moment in history, I was only 14 years old, and I still think about it. And I say, that to me was like a pivotal moment when I said, man, I really got to get back into this because this is my family heritage. And I told my dad, I said, let's do this. Let's get back into this. And my mother at the time, unfortunately, she was sick. Ultimately she passed away. But Dad always said to me, he said, when the timing is right, we're going to go ahead, son, and we're going to get back into this, and I'm going to give you 110%. And he did. Once she passed away, he was by my side for the next 20 something years, basically doing this. And I mean, I say I'm enjoying what the benefits today of what he helped me build, and I'm honored, that that's how he spent his last moments too, was helping me develop the business.
Initially, did you have a clear vision of where you wanted to take the business? Was it strategic in the way you set things up, or?
Well, funny thing is, one thing that we knew for sure was that we wanted to be here in Tampa, because this is, like I said, it's home. It's where the heart is, like they say, but it's where the history is, the Cuban history specifically. And my father was a big history guy, so we knew we wanted to be here in this area. As far as that is concerned, everything else, like they say, everything kind of falls in place by itself. After we started making cigars and getting back into this, everything kind of just one thing led to another. And I don't know if you know the people at Flor de Gonzalez, Yavi Gonzalez, great friends of mine. And when I first started, they helped me. Arnaldo Gonzalez, her father, he's like a mentor, like an uncle to me, and he helped me out tremendously when I started in the business. Even with tobacco and just stuff that he taught me and lessons that I still hold dear to this day.
What would you say were the aspects that you found most challenging when establishing the business originally?
Well, I think anybody that goes into business, like my father used to say, there's always a risk involved, right? But the biggest thing is you got to be a little crazy, I think, when you get into any business, because realistically, you don't know if you're going to make it, But I think that even from the beginning, thanks to my dad, who was always very confident and very, very positive guy, he would always say to me, don't worry about it. Like in the movie, if you build it, they will come. And I mean, God, Reinhard, for a while there, we were making cigars and we were just stockpiling them. And, little by little, they all started selling. And we said, wow, well, you know what? We got to make more. And I guess, like they say, if you build it, they will come. And, now we have a good, loyal following among our customers and very loyal customers, So, I mean, I'm blessed.
What do you feel that those people cling on to particularly? Why is it that those people, would pick a Serafin de Cuba over any of the other cigars? Because we all know there's plenty out there, and there's so many strong brands. There's so many interesting
Absolutely.
stories and concepts and great cigars to be had. But what is it in your humble opinion that keeps people come back and yearn for that particular experience that you can offer?
That's a good question. I think one of the things is consistency, for sure. We try to be very consistent with the product. I think the other thing too is, we're here. Like, I mean, we are physically here. Like, you pick up the phone, you can call me. And, and my wife might get mad sometimes because, we might be out and it's just a phone call. Say, listen, I got to take this. And, it's, people like the fact that I'm available, that I'm here, not 24 hours, but pretty much pretty close to it. And, we stand behind a product. We're accessible. And I think that has a lot to do with it. And people, I hate to say it, at the end of the day, they still enjoy dealing with a small company. I think sometimes when you get too big, I think it could be a little dangerous. But we'll see what happens going forward. I'm happy with the way things are and the way things are headed, and well, so far so good. We'll see how it all unfolds, I guess. Last
And,
2 years have been really good lately. So.
and you've mentioned with all those challenges in the beginning, with the risks that you had to take in order to set everything up properly. I mean, what a success story it has been ever since, right? But you still managed to keep the nucleus and the true nature of what your business has always been about, the family values and that history and the legacy component. How challenging, though, is it to operate on such premises and because we know, such a history can be a blessing and a burden in many cases. For you, obviously, the way I feel it is, it must be a blessing and a rich source of inspiration, enthusiasm, and thrive and passion to do this. But at the same time, it brings with it tremendous responsibility.
Oh, sure. Well, at the end of the day, you never want to fail, right? And I think the word failure has never been in my vocabulary. Like, I set out to do something, and I remember, like, a couple years ago, I did a cigar for my dad, which has been pretty successful. And it's the Don Ramon 1942, and the one I'm doing now, smoking now, is a Don Ramon 1917, which is in honor of my grandfather, because of course they were both Don Ramon. And I remember in the beginning, I said, you know what, I'm gonna make this cigar. I'm gonna make something that my father liked, which was a Connecticut wrapper, smooth, creamy. And I said, you know what? I'm going to blend it the way that he liked it, the way that I like it. And I hope it sells. I go, and if it doesn't sell, it doesn't matter because it's something that I told my friend Fernando, who helps me here, with the business. And I said, Fernando, if it sells, good. If it doesn't sell, I don't care. But I'm doing it because I need to do this. I need to for myself. And wouldn't you know, the cigar's been a hit. And I said to myself, wow, it's just one of those things. Sometimes you just got to do the things you love. The good things they'll follow. The results will follow.
That's a good example of how you took inspiration from something so close to your heart and to the family, and ultimately turned it into a cigar experience with everything that you have in your portfolio and the things that you're working on. What are the elements that you primarily draw inspiration from in order to cast the portfolio and develop that brand?
Well, it's funny because I say that. Well, again, another person that I've always looked up to is Carlito Fuente, and that's no surprise. I mean, he's a great guy, great friend. He always says that things don't happen by accident, and I believe he's right because it's funny. I made this cigar, and I named it Don Ramon, the first one. And then this is the second one. And, I'm a big history fan, right? Well, wouldn't you know that about almost 80 or 90 years ago, there was a cigar here in Tampa called Don Ramon. And I didn't even know when I made my father's cigar. I just set out to make that cigar. And I said, holy shit, my son goes to, one of those, the Cigar Heritage Festival, which is a big deal here in town. And there was a lady there selling old labels. And I said, hey, son, I said, go over there. He was with my daughter. I said, see if there's any old label that I don't have, because he knows I collect. I'm a huge collector of all the vintage tobacco stuff. And he comes back a few minutes later and he didn't bring anything. I said, oh, you didn't find anything? He said, no, Dad, everything they have there, you pretty much have it or you know about it. And you know what, right here, he shows up with this label and it's Don Ramon. I said, holy, well, he didn't show it to me then. He gave it to me for Christmas after I had already made the cigar. And I said, wow, I cried. I said, this is amazing that I didn't even know that this existed. And I take pride in knowing, a lot of the history and research it. And it's almost like, to me, it was like, I don't know, man, maybe my dad or my grandfather sent me this label from heaven and said, hey, here it is, make it. I said, wow. So just stuff like that, man, just inspiration, weird things that have happened. I don't know. I feel blessed. You know, I feel like I'm on the right path. You know.
Mm, I hear you. It's a whole different challenge though than going from concept to the actual cigar experience. How did you approach the manufacturing side in particular, and knowing very well that there's not that many people nowadays who take on the challenge of still manufacturing cigars on US soil. um,
Sure.
how is that process like for you, and why do you think it's still so important to keep that fire alive and to continue that tradition of producing exceptional cigars under those oftentimes challenging in the surroundings and environment?
Well, that's a great question. I feel that people still they associate this area with cigar making and the rich history that we have. And you know, if I'm gonna do this, I have to be a steward, I guess, of making a quality product. And you know, you have to make something that people are going to really appreciate. And of course, there's always people that come in and they're not familiar with the brands, they've never heard of it or whatever, and then they try it and they really like what I'm doing and they say, "Wow, what a great cigar!" And I say to them, "Well, I'm honored that you enjoyed it, but on top of that, I'm even more honored to continue the legacy and the history of cigar making in the Tampa area, which you know to me it's a big deal." And you know, as long as you put out a quality product, I think people really appreciate that. You know.
Well, walk us through some of the intricacies, maybe. You know, we always have people on the show who want to deep dive and who want to understand what's behind the creation process. How do you go about sourcing the raw materials to have that steady supply of the very best tobaccos that ultimately will end up in one of your cigars?
Well, you know, the biggest thing is you got to try all the different tobaccos that's out there, and you got to come up with that blend that you like. And you know, that could take months, really. I mean, some people say years. I'm not the pickiest person. If I find a blend that I like, you know, we'll make a couple hundred of them and we'll try them out. And if it's pretty consistent, then we'll continue with that blend. And
Mhm.
you know, that's pretty much that's what I've been doing. And you know, if it works out, then you have like I have a lot of loyal friends here and customers, and I always let them try it because sometimes you might blend a cigar for yourself that you might love, but then when more people try it, it might not be what they're looking for, you know. So you have to get a lot of feedback from different people, and that's what I've been trying to do all this time is just get as much feedback as I can from people that are close to me, and that's how we develop the blends, you know.
Would you say that's one of the particular benefits that you have because you're so in tune with the local community, with your customers walking through the door? I mean, that's a different setup compared to a large manufacturer in the Dominican Republic, in Honduras, in Nicaragua.
You're right.
And you work on an idea, a vision, you come up with a blend, but it might take a couple of months, sometimes years down the road until that very cigar, that project hits the market and people get to enjoy it and appreciate it. And then how do you collect all that feedback? For you have
Sure.
the ear firmly on the ground, and you get that immediate response from the people who enjoy it.
I guess I'm very lucky in that regard. I mean, I have, I don't know if it's a bunch of guys that just want to smoke cigars for free, but I like to say that they're just, they're really loyal and they're very information, you know, very informative when I ask them to give me their opinion and be honest about it. You know, if it's something that's too harsh, I want to know too, you know. There was always cigars that we made that even I smoked them and I said, oh man, that blend is just too strong. It's not this, it's not that. And like they say, you go back to the drawing board until you perfect it and you get what you're looking for, you know.
Besides the customers that you have coming into the shop, coming into your little factory, your little workshop there, who are the people in the industry that you listen to a lot, that you take inspiration from, and that you learn from every single day?
Well, like I said, for many years, you know, Flor de Gonzalez, Arnaldo Gonzalez was a great friend and a mentor. I just went down to Miami to see him recently. He's already retired, but his daughter's still in the business, you know. And every chance I get, I always send him what I make too, and I say, "Hey, try these out. Tell me what you think about them." He gives me his opinion as well. He always tells me if I'm doing good or bad. You know, Carlito Fuente, we speak on a regular basis, and he's always given me a lot of encouragement, and he's been very helpful. You know, for the last couple years too. You know, I've been very honored to have his. I mean, we've been friends for a long time, but for the last couple years, we've definitely spoken a lot and been in touch with each other a lot. So I'm honored to have that, somebody of that magnitude, of that experience, giving me a hand. That's a big deal. You know, I'm lucky. What can I tell you? I'm just very, very fortunate.
Arnold, let's talk a little bit about history and let's go back in time. We started the show with a rich family background and history, and you said you're an avid collector. You love to deep dive into history as well. But can you talk a little bit with us about Tampa and the importance that you feel that little place on planet Earth on the map has had on the premium cigar industry, and why it seems to have such a very special energy and vibe when it comes to premium cigars, still to this day.
Absolutely. Well, it's funny because the whole thing really happened by accident, right? So there was a Cuban guy and a Spanish guy. They were based in New York, and it was a gentleman named Gavino Gutierrez, and the other gentleman was Bernardino Gargol, which was a Cuban, and he had, believe it or not, he had a guava jelly business in New York City. So he was looking for a place that he could grow wild guavas out of all things. You know what a guava is, right? The fruit, the tropical fruit. Some people don't, but anyway. So somebody said, "Oh yeah, there's a place down there in Florida. It's called Tampa. They have wild guava trees." So anyway, they take a little trip. Imagine this, going from New York, down the Atlantic, and they stop in a little place called Key West, right? Well, Key West at that time was already a cigar making center. There was a gentleman there named Eduardo Hidalgo Gato. He was already making cigars. And Mr. Ybor from Ybor City was also there. And he had his factory called El Príncipe de Gales. Well, in a chance meeting, these three men met. And I guess, I always like to picture them sitting in a rocking chair in the front of an old Key West building. And they said, "Well, where are you headed?" "Oh, we're going to this place. It's a swamp up there in the north called Tampa." "Oh yeah, what's over there?" "Wild guava trees." And then Ybor says, "Well, hey, do you guys mind if I come?" "No, go ahead." And that was 1885, I think, okay? Because Ybor, he started the brand in 1853 in Havana. And then in 1869, because of the 10 Years' War, he ends up going to Key West because even though he was a Spaniard, he was sympathetic to the cause of freedom in Cuba. So they say to him, "Listen, if you don't leave, we're going to go ahead and arrest you." So he ends up in Key West. Anyway, excuse me, by the time these two guys bump into him, he was already there for about 15 years. And he was doing really well. The only thing is Key West at that time was pretty much disconnected from the rest of the United States. So he felt like he needed to find a place where his tobacco and his cigars could be sold easier throughout the rest of the country. So anyway, so they take the boat, they come up the Gulf, and they find Tampa. And Ybor comes and buys 40 acres. And those first 40 acres that he bought, that was the development of Ybor City. And then, there was other gentlemen, like another man named Ignacio Aya. And my understanding is the Newmans are going to make a cigar now to honor Ignacio Aya. So, I mean, it was amazing because once like they said, like in the movie, if you build it, they will come. Once all these guys got together, they started coming up here. Then other companies started coming in from other parts of the country. People that were like, let's say up in Washington State, even I've read about, New York, Chicago, and they all started coming to Tampa because the beautiful thing about Tampa at that time is that the tobacco was easily available up the Gulf. They would put it on boats from Cuba, come right up the Gulf. And then, of course, the other thing missing were the cigar makers. And a lot of them were already in Key West anyway. So once they found out about Tampa, then they started coming up here. And then other ones that came obviously from Cuba and Spain. And, once they got everything rolling, I mean, Tampa at one time, I think, I can't remember the number, but it was like millions. It was the biggest cigar making, even bigger than Cuba in its time, millions of cigars.
Unbelievable, huh?
Unbelievable. And, what's funny is people always ask me, they say, well, because they used the phrase back then, and they used to call them clear Havanas. And I still use the phrase, loosely here. And people say, well, what's the clear Havana? I said, I didn't come up with the phrase. That phrase was Mr. Ybor and Haya and these guys. But a clear Havana was basically a Cuban cigar made on U.S. soil back then with Cuban tobacco made by Cubans. So I always tell people, well, mine are made by Cubans, but using Cuban seed from Central America mostly. Next, it's the closest thing to Havana.
Arnold, just to put things into perspective, I mean, what was the taste profile like in those days? How were cigars different? What was it that people were looking for and enjoying? Because from today's perspective and through our lens now, there's certain things we've grown accustomed to, and certain taste profiles that have become rather popular. Back in those days, those cigars were of a different kind, and probably
Sure.
comparatively a totally different experience.
Well, what I've seen from, I have a lot of old boxes that I collect, and like I said, the old labels and stuff. There was many, many shapes back then. I remember reading that, like the Ebor, Mr. Ebor's brand and Príncipe de Gales, they had over 150 shapes back then, which to me is astronomical, man. To make 150 different vitolas, that's incredible. And they made a lot of figurados, perfectos and salomons that were small, and just, I mean, the most intricate stuff, man. It was unbelievable. I have old molds here, and some of the molds that I have are of weird sizes like that. I mean, you can't even find a cigar maker to make those anymore because they're so difficult. That's why I remember one time Carlito told me about when he started making the Hemingway series, how hard that was, because those things had not been seen in many, many years. And that's what I seen from back in that time, was a lot of those cigars back then were funny shapes, very small. And I like to think that back then people's palate was a lot milder than now, because a lot of the cigar boxes, they even say it, they say very mild, just light, don't bite. They use phrases like that. And it's because I think they really like the mildness. They weren't looking for the complex flavors that most people are looking for today. You
Mhm.
know,
When we take the timeline a little further and explore some of the decades thereafter, how did Iber and Tampa evolve after that?
well, I mean, it became a cigar making city for, let's see, we could probably say the next 30 or 40 years. So it's like well into like the 30s, 40s, 50s even. I mean, really, I hate to say it, but the truth is, if it would not have been for the revolution in Cuba, who knows where Tampa cigar making would be today? Because once that happened, it just put a big halt on production in the city. And then a lot of the older cigar makers, they started dying down. People just weren't coming to make cigars anymore. And there was a huge void for tobacco during that time. I mean, that's why, a lot of the big manufacturers, Fuente and all these guys, they all had to go to Central America or Dominican Republic because cigar making here was just non-existent, mostly because of the supply, because you couldn't get Cuban tobacco. So those guys, I mean, they were the true pioneers. Men like Angel Oliva from Oliva Tobacco, growing Cuban seeds in all these different countries, trying to develop a substitute for, for the right palate. Because imagine you get Cuban seed tobacco and you start planting it and you don't even know what that's going to taste like. And wouldn't you know it, Ecuador turned around to be a huge, wrapper country, and then Nicaragua and Dominican Republic. And they were just trying to fill the void for the cigar smokers in America that were used to cigar smoking, with Cuban tobacco. So those guys had a big challenge ahead of them. Now I can say 50, 60 years later, we're very fortunate to have the tobacco that we have because of those pioneers, of those men that did that.
How much do you still think that even in today's cigar world, some of those early inspirations, some of the vitolas, some of the style and the characteristics that the Tampa stood for, do you think could still be relevant to today's consumer, or how do you try to factor that into the way you manufacture cigars today, in order to cherish that history and highlight it and make people understand what Tampa meant for the premium cigar world? Because I think you have an incredible tool there to share some of the
Thank you.
rich history and that legacy through the means of providing people with an actual cigar experience.
You're right. I mean, when they see the different sizes, I mean, of course, I show them the history, the boxes and the labels and everything. They love to see that. And then once we show them, the cigars, the ones with the different shapes, and they go crazy over that because it's a handmade artisan type of cigar. The perfectos, the salomons, all that stuff. There's such an art form to it. And that's what I say. It's an artisan thing is what we're doing, really. I mean, we're a boutique technically, right? But when you see the small cigars like that, people love that. I think they're fascinated by it, to be honest with you.
Jose, I would love to bring you in for a second. When you think about everything that Arnold shared with us today, when we explored that historical element of Tampa, how do you think about the importance of Tampa and Ybor City as a cigar manufacturing nucleus, and how do you still think it reflects in today's industry and how people operate and think about the industry?
First of all, let me tell you something. I've known Arnold, which is really Arnaldo. We haven't personally met, but we've been friends through Facebook for many years. In the last 3 years, a lot. First of all, he was trying to remember the numbers, and I remember the numbers clear. Tampa, 100% Cuban, binder, filler, wrapper, got to make 500 million cigars. So that Cuba at that time was making 30, 40. So there, Tampa alone, we're talking, was making 10 times more cigars than what Cuba was making. The value of Cuban tobacco got to where it got, not because it was made in Cuba. It was all the tobacco that was exported to the States. And you got to remember that there was hundreds and hundreds of factories, and the majority of all those factories, the majority of the filler was all Cuban tobacco, whether it was Pennsylvania or Ohio, the little shops that were in New Jersey and New York and Florida and Chicago, all of it was all Cuban tobacco. And the downfall of Tampa was, like Arnaldo correctly said, the old timers all got old. When they arrived, they were 30, 40 years old. The revolution comes, and the ones that left Cuba were, they could work for 10, 15 years, but they all got old. If you go down to Calle Ocho in Miami, you still see some of the old timers. But every time I go to Cuban Craft and I ask, how's so-and-so? Well, he retired, but fucking retired at 80, 85 years old. So you can't make cigars for the rest of your life. But the impact that Tampa has still today, even a lot of people, unfortunately, do not recognize it. And I think one of the main things that we do on our show is to try to go down memory lane so people understand that all these big companies that you see today were companies that started with 3 or 4 rollers. Look what Arnaldo is doing now. He's making whatever it is today, but we don't know what's going to happen in 2 or 3 years. Now, one thing I can guarantee you, whether he makes 1,000 cigars a month or he starts to making 10,000 a month, you can be sure that he has learned the lesson that still today a lot of people have not learned. You cannot, like Fuentes says, rush the hands of time. It always has to be quality and not quantity. And that's why in the last year and a half, like we said, we never mentioned on this show or other shows we're invited on our show brands, but a lot of people are cutting corners. And that's why so many people are complaining about bad draw, underfilled cigars canoeing, side burning, tunneling, and all that. Why? Because people just want to make a fast buck, and they know, or they don't want to realize that this will have an end, like what happened in '97, is people continue to make bad cigars.
That's true. Absolutely.
But also talking about history, when you go down memory lane, and it was nice when we had Arnaldo on our show, and we always tell it. I always tell people, remember who brought you to the dance. If it wasn't for Angel Oliva, if it wasn't for Néstor Plasencia, if it wasn't for Arturo Fuente, if it wasn't for Don Orlando Padrón, Rolando Reyes, and all those people before us that, thank God, I had the pleasure to meet and interact with, that Edgar Coleman, Bobby and Eric's father, Stanford Newman. I mean, we're talking about institution. We're talking about companies 125 years old. La Aurora, 120 years old. Fuente, 112 years old. You got to go back to all those people that didn't have anything. We talk about, how great Fuente started, after being burned down in Nicaragua, in Honduras, going to Santiago, starting with seven workers, and today have 3,000. La Aurora in 1903 started with 3 rollers. Don Eduardo the old man, Eduardo's father, started with 3 rollers, not even in Santiago. And look what that company came into. But it's all about family business. It's all about heart and soul. It's not working with an adding machine to see how you're going to cut a nickel here or a dime there. It's, taking your time to make the blend, and the blend takes sometimes 6 months, a year, year and a half, 2 years, 3 years. And that is the difference when you're working with tradition, with family values, with your heart, with your soul, and you're trying to make something. I've always told people this, because at the show, it doesn't matter where the show is, all the newcomers bring me a little cigar. They leave me a card, 2 cigars. Senor Blanco, we know you smoke everything. Can you smoke the cigar? The first thing I ask them, where are they made? Tell me a little bit about the blend. And what are you looking for? And the first thing is, they tell me, not everyone says, oh, this is the closest thing to a Padron, to a Fuente, to a Pepin, or to Davidoff. I said, right or wrong, I tell them, you're wrong. This is why. Because those already are successful brand. Try to come up with something different with the packaging, with the shape, with the cigar, with the tobaccos. Tell me something unique. If you try to make a cigar that everybody's going to like, you're going to fail. You have to make a cigar that certain percentage are going to fall in love. They're going to be buying it, and they're going to follow you. My 2 cents.
100%.
Jose, I love the fact that you also took us down memory lane, as you call it, and shared a bit of some historical insights there. A question to both of you, Jose, but also Arnold, of course. Tampa, probably in the wider perception and in a lot of people's feeling for the industry, has probably lost some of the importance, some of the relevance, or at least you don't see it mentioned as oftenly as, of course, the other well-known origins of today, where Nicaragua is dominating on the manufacturing end, the Dominican Republic, Honduras, Cuba, of course. But how do you think that Tampa, Ybor City are due for a bit more of a renaissance, so that we could see more there with more people venturing out on a small boutique business, family operation like Arnold has built, in order to revive some of the history and bring back some of the relevance of Tampa as a cigar manufacturing place, even?
Jose, you want me to answer that?
You're the guest.
Okay. Well, I mean, obviously, it's definitely more expensive to make cigars in the States. But I feel that, more people are joining us. There's already a handful of manufacturers here in the area, small, boutique brands. But from what I can gather, everybody's doing pretty well. There was just an article, I think it was in Fox News, I think it was like last week, somebody forwarded it to me. And it talks about the resurgence in Tampa cigar making, and how, a lot of folks, believe it or not, people that have come to the area to visit, tourists, they have been captivated to take in the history and the culture, and people that have moved here even, and they're out there seeking, like the Newmans. The Newmans now, they're making a few cigars in their factory. One of the rollers that works there for them, Luis, he used to work here with me, and for a long time, he's a great guy. He's making the American, which is their cigar, and it's unbelievable the amount of people that go every day to the Newman factory to see the operation and what they're doing. And there's definitely an interest in people, in the Tampa cigar making history. Whether or not more people will follow, that's tough, because, it's all an investment, and it's going to take some time. But I think some people, we will have other people coming into the industry. I don't know if it's going to be big like, in Nicaragua and Dominican Republic, of course not. But there will be some people that will follow, I think,
To be honest, I was going to bring up what the Newmans have done, and we got to give a lot of credit to Drew Newman. But I think what's happened, to be honest, is that the I don't want to sound like some people say you're an old dinosaur, but the problem is that yes, I'm old, but I've learned and I keep on learning. I think the problem with Tampa has been that there has not been enough awareness created about it. I mean, we think, like on our show for the last 3 years, because, Carlito was born there, and that's where, Fuentes started off. He keeps talking about, Tampa and Tampa. I think the festival also helps. You being there also helps too. But I think it has to be like, we have to talk more about it. And let's say, okay, a cigar that probably is made in Dominican Republic that retails for $10. The one maybe made in Tampa has to sell for $14, $16. But it has a reason why, because it's the cost of making it. So I think maybe a couple of people might come in, have 3 or 4 rollers, make cigars that are perfect, great construction, great age, great blends, something different, and it will have a what's the word? It has a space for that, because people like things that are unique, and people like things that are hard to get and that are great. So what you're doing, look at the Americano. Everything they make is being sold, and a couple of other people in Tampa doing. So the person that's, whether from Europe or from New York or from wherever it is, he's from California, he goes to Tampa. He smokes a Robusto that's probably $10. All of a sudden he sees this cigar for $14. If you explain to him and they understand why it costs that, and it's a great cigar, and like you say, if you build it, people will come. But it just can't be an average cigar. It has to be a great cigar, my opinion.
Absolutely. 100%. You're right.
Arnold, we had a question from Eric Padron. I know he was looking forward to the show, and he's joining us over on Facebook live stream. So he posted this very short and an interesting question. He would like to know why Tarpon Springs and not Ybor City.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Well, it's funny because Tarpon Springs was something that kind of happened by accident. We decided to come here one day and visit it, and my father just kind of liked this area, and we stayed. But Ybor City was always my first choice. But yeah, we came here one day by accident just because a friend of ours he decided to bring us here to this area, which is a little bit north of Clearwater. And my father just said, "You know what?" He said, "Son," he said, "if we come out here, we're probably going to be the only ones out here." And I said, "Yeah, you're right, Dad." And I said, "How about Ybor City?" He says, "Well, let's give this a shot and see how it goes." And then before you knew it, one thing led to another. Year 1, year 2. I mean, it's been almost 18 years we've been here in this location. And that's the only reason we stayed here, is because business has been well for us. And, Tampa has grown so much that I say that this whole area is the Tampa Bay area. It doesn't have to be just in Ybor City anymore. We're basically an extension of Tampa here on this side of town.
Great point.
But my heart is still in Ybor City, though.
There was a very interesting comment from Jared Davis over on Facebook, and it is so important to support small family rolling operations that still exist in Ybor and Miami and even New York City. He said it would be great to also see the government to support all these artisan shops and these small operations like they do with farmers. What do you think, Arnold? How could we all do better as an industry? What could people do? What could probably the regulatory bodies and the government do to support such endeavors and to help strengthening the local business there and reviving some of the local traditions in cigar manufacturing?
Well, for starters, the biggest thing is, on a federal level is regulation, right? Government regulation. As long as the government doesn't get involved and heavily regulate cigar manufacturing, then, more companies will evolve and come and make cigars again. But the problem is we always have that fear lingering over us about, government regulation. And I know Carlito and Padron and all the guys, they've done a tremendous job with the CRA and everything to try to get the government to kind of just, ease off a little bit. And for the past couple of years, people are still, they're still nervous about the government, but I feel like they feel better about the situation, with the FDA and everything else. But that's really the biggest thing, is always the government regulation, trying to go after tobacco in general.
What about small businesses and all the operators that are in the area supporting each other? Do you see more opportunities for people to work together? I mean, Jeff Borshowitz is doing a great job with the Florida sun-grown tobacco that more and more people look into and appreciate. But where do you think there could be more element of unity and working together with all those people who try to do something there?
Well, I feel like Jeff has done a great job. You're right with the tobacco farm in Claremont. Um, he took something that had been lost for many, many years, which was, growing tobacco in Florida, which is another really crazy expensive endeavor. And he went ahead and he's done it, and it's very successful. Something like that, an operation like that, that's kind of hard to do. I mean, hard to replicate even. So my hat goes off to Jeff Borshowitz for doing that. I mean, that's a tremendous labor of love what he's done. And, for him to be able to successfully make a product, like I said, my friend is the one rolling the cigars there at Newman with the tobacco from Jeff's farm. And, he tells me, he goes, he remembers, the first crop that he came up with, it wasn't of the quality that it is now. And my understanding is Jeff brought in a lot of soil and, different, conditions, and he got really great advice from tobacco growers and people that helped him. And now he's making a really quality product in Claremont. But I feel like other businesses in Florida, they do kind of help each other out. Some of the wine businesses, the liquor businesses and stuff, they kind of help us out. We do events together and pairings and stuff like that. And like you said, it's all about raising awareness. Once people know about what you're doing and that you're doing it here locally, I mean, I think that that carries a lot of weight. People really, they're very open to that idea.
Arnold, one thought that crossed my mind is when we think about the talent of people that you're working with and the people that you have around you rolling cigars and keeping that flame alive. A different way to look at it is probably the manufacturing countries, in particular Nicaragua, Cuba. They all see a tremendous brain drain, and it gotten worse over the last couple of years of people trying to get away, trying to find a new home and new opportunities for themselves. Do you see potential for some of those people to eventually end up in the Tampa area and strengthen some of the local businesses there?
Oh, sure. Well, I can tell you offhand. I mean, from the time we've been doing this here, we've seen so many Cubans come over, because of the political situation in Cuba has been very bad now forever, really, for the last 60 years. But in the last, I could say maybe 15 or 20 years, but just in the last 2 or 3 years, a lot of Cuban cigar makers have started to come, and they come up here because there's a little bit more work in Miami. And, some of these guys, they branch out, they open up their own little places, and, there's no telling within, I don't know, maybe the next 15 or 20 years, who knows? I mean, we might just, reinvent the whole Ybor City thing again. It's possible.
How difficult is it for you to find the right talent and have great people working alongside you? It's a big challenge for everybody these days, right? I mean, I come from the hospitality world, and traditionally that was an industry where it was so hard to find people who are dedicated, passionate, and willing to take a lot of the sacrifices that come with the job. And now we see it in all industries. How do you experience that?
Well, I think, cigar making and tobacco in general is something that if you're not passionate about it, you really can't do it, man, because it's a tough job, and making cigars is a tough job. And if your heart and soul is not into it, it's going to reflect in the work. You know what I mean? And sure, it's hard to find good people, but believe it or not, there's still good people out there, and they do come along. And I've been fortunate. I've been fortunate to have good people helping me out, and hopefully we'll continue to find good people. But you're right. I mean, you can only be as successful if you have good people around you and good people helping you. That's the key to your success.
Well, looking into the future, what are some of the things that you have in your mind when it comes to the strategic development of both Serafin de Cuba, Flor de Tampa, your various endeavors and the business in general?
Well, the other day I was talking to Rich, and Rich said, he's a very aggressive guy. I got to say, I wish I would have had Rich 10 years ago or 15 years ago, but he says, he goes, we're going to take this brand and we're going to take these brands, we're going to make them national. I said, Rich, you know what, man? He goes, we're doing this slow but steady. That's his phrase. And I say, you know what? Slow but steady works good for me. And it's like Jose said, it's not about quantity, it's about quality. And that's what I want. I want to be able to take these brands to the next level, to take them to shops across the country, and for the consumers in these different areas to try it and say, hey, wow, Flor de Tampa, I never heard of it, but man, what a great cigar that is, you know? And then once they find out, then their cousin and their brother and other people are going to smoke it. And I just, you know, putting cigar making, Tampa cigar making back on the map, and it's an honor for me, you know.
What does that mean for you in terms of how you develop the portfolio, the different cigars that you're working on? Do you rather believe in kind of like a very small core set of brands that truly carry the essence of what you're all about? Do you rather try to do more things like little one-offs, a little run here, a little run there? Because obviously you have such an incredible source of inspiration, so many historical references, even where you can go to, whether it's old vitolas, all the historical things that you can work on and revive and bring back. But how do you structure the portfolio and ultimately see the brand panning out?
Well, it's funny because I mean, we've already come up with, you know, several brands already, as you can see, but we have other ones that I haven't come out with yet, which are already in my pipeline. And you know, when I do release them, I want to come up with stuff like you said that's unique, stuff that's different. So I think you know, like Rich said, slow but steady, one at a time. See in the next 4 or 5 years, obviously, hopefully, the government doesn't get too crazy with regulations. And if that doesn't happen, then we can continue to, you know, every year maybe come up with something new and something different, and just add it to the portfolio. And you know, that's what I'm all about, man. It's not, having different, unique cigars, stuff that that really catches an eye. That's what I think is, like you said, my claim. You know, it's just being different.
I mean, obviously, you've seen all the evolution in the industry. You've seen the ups and downs and the trends and different phases that the cigar world goes through. What are some of the things that currently keep you up at night? What are some of the things that you're seeing, whether it's good or negative? You know, but just some of the things that you feel at the moment are truly important or will change the industry moving forward.
That's a great question. I feel, you know, I'm a traditionalist. I remember going back to, you know, 2003, 2004, I would go to the trade show with Flor de Gonzalez and help them out. And to me, man, it was like always about the tradition, you know, like wearing the hat, wearing the guayabera. This is a part of me. This is a part of who I am. And it's a part of our industry. It's a part of the history. And now I see more people, I'm not going to mention names, but they go out on a limb and they want to break away from tradition. And I'm not about that, man. I'm about keeping the history and keeping the tradition. And that's where my passion comes from. And, you know, I think I'm a pretty crazy person when, I don't know, there's 24 hours in a day and maybe 21 or 22 hours of my day is devoted to tobacco and cigars. And my brain is always going. And you know what? I think, well, I don't know if Eric told you, but I even built a little cigar cabinet in my backyard now. So I don't know if my wife is too happy about that, but now I come home, I do my thing, and now I go back out there, and the brain continues to work and to function and to think about tobacco and cigars, and it's my passion, man. It's what I do, and I think that's why I'm doing well, is because I'm so entrenched in it. But it's because I love it. I do it because I love it, and you know, that to me is the biggest thing, is being able to hold on to the tradition. Once you break away from the history and the tradition, as an individual, you lose who you are as a person. You know.
When you look at the industry from a meta position today, are there certain things that you worried about, or certain things where you feel what you just said is probably not as respected as you would like to? What should we focus on there? What are some of the things to be cognizant about and aware of in order to cherish that tradition and keep it alive?
To me, you know, there's a certain romance associated with cigar making and the boxes and the labels, and it's like I said, it's a historical aspect of it, right? When I see other brands that they come up with these weird labels and the packaging, and it's just not, I mean, I guess it works for those companies, but to me, it's, you know, it's all about having a beautiful box and a presentation and a label, and like Jose said, and a quality product. When you put all that together, you know, there's nothing nicer, man, than getting a box of cigars as a gift and looking at it and saying, wow, look at that, how beautiful, But you see a lot of companies now, like I said, they're going with more modern, uh, twists and designs. And I guess everything is in life has to evolve. But I think when it comes to cigar making, we got to stay true to our core values and our traditions and our histories.
Mhm.
That's just how I like to do it anyway.
Ryan, good to see you, my friend, all the way from sunny California.
Yeah, it's sunny and rainy. It's just taking turns. Sun, rain, sun, rain, sun, rain. I can't keep up with it. Arnold, this is great. I saw you a few weeks ago on the Size show, the Cigar International Cigar
Yes,
Lounge, whatever that's
remember.
called. That was great.
Thank you.
Yeah, I enjoyed that a lot. This is cool. I mean, you kind of already answered this, but I'm really enjoying all the conversation about. Reinhard wanted me to ask a question about Florida versus California. But I think we covered. I think we covered that last week. Florida's like the Wild West in the East. And Florida's people make fun of California. Californians make fun of Florida. We've got all the taxes. So anyway, I was going to ask about something else. I
Sure.
love tradition. I love history. I'm a chess player, and so it's fun in my mind to play a game today that people played 2,000 years ago or 1,500 years ago, and through all the centuries and changes in the game and the historical context and how different nations had influence on the game and how trade and war happened, and then you look at the game itself and how the rules altered, and then you take technology and you throw that in at the end, and how did that change the game, and all these things, and it's still going today. And I love things that are so old that will never die, and people keep being inspired. And so I think that's kind of what you're talking about here, but I don't know if you could kind of elaborate and kind of take that metaphor of chess and relate it to cigars, maybe.
Sure. Great point, actually. I think you bring up a very great point. I think what's interesting about our industry is that if you go back 100 years, we were still using the same freaking tools back then that we're using now, man. A chaveta, the molds, which of course now they're plastic, makes a better cigar. But you got the chaveta, you got the mold, you got the board the cutting board. I mean, there's not much to it, guys. I mean, like every industry in the world, computers, they've evolved, the iPad, this, that. We're still making the cigars the same way they were made 100 years ago. And I think that's the constant here is the tradition, is the history. Keep it going. That's what I feel, how I feel about it.
Cool. Thanks. Cheers.
Thank you. Good talking to you.
Arnold, now you spoke a little bit about the future and some of the things that you obviously want to continue and keep alive. Now with Rich involved, there's a new element to the business. I know you'll be at the trade show in July.
Looking forward to it. Absolutely.
The year ahead, both for your brand but also for the industry. What are some of the things that you're truly excited about and most looking forward to over the next couple of months?
Well, like I said, I'm really eager. I mean, we're starting to get reorders now from some of the people that Rich got on board in the beginning, and I'm excited about that. Because now that means that more people are having the opportunity to try our cigars outside of this market. And if we go to that trade show and we pick up, I don't know, I'm gonna just throw a crazy number, 15 or 20 accounts. I'm happy with that. You know what I mean? Because that's going to be, over the course of time, it's more people. And who knows? I mean, who knows in a couple of years how many more accounts we can pick up. But, like you said, it's quality, not quantity. And, as long as we can continue to do that and still service the customers that we have as well, the retail end, I'm perfectly happy with it,
Well, speaking of that, we often discuss on the show how a lot of romanticism regarding premium cigars is obviously on the manufacturing side of things. We now talk more and more to retailers, even here on the show. But one side of the business that is not talked about in as much detail is some of the the behind the scenes work when it comes to the distribution side, when it comes to people on the road, whether it's independent brokers, sales reps, people who deserve an incredible amount of gratitude and appreciation for all the hard work that you do as a manufacturer. What are your strategic thoughts when it comes to that? And obviously you see a lot of how other brands operate, the challenges that they face, and how would you like to set that up for yourself and the brand moving forward?
Well, I could tell you, I've been out there myself personally, and I've hit the pavement, knocking on doors, and it's hard. It's hard when you're the new guy. When you have a brand that they've never heard of, it's hard for you to get your foot in the door. But when you have somebody like Rich, or somebody that's an industry veteran that can get your foot in the door and has a relationship already with an existing relationship with a lot of these places, man, it makes such a huge difference. And all you need is that one opportunity for them to let your product give you a little inch of real estate in the humidor. And once that happens, we got to take it and run, man. We just got to continue to make a quality product and get the confidence, from that retailer. And in essence, that'll trickle down to the customers, right? Because then they're going to believe in the product and they're going to go in there and say, hey, this is a product that I can pick up, that I know I'm going to like it. So like Jose said, there's no room right now for mistake or mediocre cigars. At least for me anyway. I don't want to be that guy. I don't want to make, a million cigars if they're not going to be quality. Yeah.
Jose.
You don't mind if I ask Arnaldo a couple of questions, do you?
Please.
Uh-oh. Meet the professor.
No. I want to spice it up a little bit. Look, Arnaldo,
okay.
I really like you a lot, and I try to be on the show as much as possible. And I like Reinhard a little bit, not a lot. I can't tell him I like him a lot because I'm going to ask you a couple of questions. Okay, let's talk a little bit about, you've been around for a while. Tell me what you like and don't like about Mexican San Andres.
Mexican San Andres is a great wrapper, but man, it is strong. And it has a lot of spice to it, in my opinion. We've got one here that we make, and it's more of a full body cigar. And when I sell that one to the customers, I tell them, if they walk in here and they say to me, I want a really heavy cigar, I go, but do you want it heavy that it's going to kick your ass, or do you want it heavy that has a good balance to it? They're like, okay, heavy with a good balance. I say, well, try the San Andres wrapper. And that's what I like about it. But it can be a very strong cigar at times. Depends on the time of the day.
Okay, what do you like more?
Really great.
What do you like more, Sumatra, Ecuador, or Habano, Ecuador?
I like Habano, Ecuador more. I find it to be a little bit creamier, I guess, in my opinion.
So what do you like more, tobaccos from Jalapa or tobaccos from Esteli?
Well, that's a tough question. Jalapa is very rich, but you know what? I got to tell you something. I think when you get Jalapa, Condega, and Esteli together, that's the perfect blend right there.
Well, Jalapa has more sweetness and Esteli has more spice and earthiness to it. Have you ever tried tobaccos from Ometepe?
También, Ometepe is very good too. As a matter of fact, yeah. I mean, you're kind of hitting on a blend that I have now. I mean, I can kind of, maybe say a little bit about it, but it does have from the different regions, and it's been very popular. It does have an Ecuador wrapper, actually. I'll say that.
Okay, my last question to you. What do you prefer more, Pennsylvania broadleaf or Connecticut broadleaf?
We used Pennsylvania broadleaf some years back, and the problem I had with Pennsylvania broadleaf is that the veins were very, very thick in the tobacco. It was just like so thick, man. We had to iron them out even. I think Connecticut broadleaf is a winner. I think it's a step up from the Pennsylvania one. But that's my opinion.
No, I agree with you. And the only way I like Pennsylvania broadleaf, it's very, very old, because I think even with 3 or 4 years, it's a little bit sharp. It's metallic. But Connecticut broadleaf has that sweetness. And I love a Maduro with the Connecticut broadleaf. So that's my 2 minutes of claim to fame that I could say one day I interviewed also Arnaldo Reinhard. You can take it away.
Thank you, Jose.
I have to add the one question that you forgot and you desperately wanted to ask, but probably wouldn't dare to. Arnold, what about the Cameroon wrapper? And what's your
The
experience?
best.
How do you work with it?
I love Cameroon wrapper. Unfortunately, it's very hard to come by for us here, but it's an amazing wrapper. I think it's one of the best in the world. My hat's off to the Mirafels for that. They make an amazing product,
You
but
know,
it's
Reinhard,
tough to get.
I didn't ask him that, and I'll tell you why. Because we've talked about Cameroon, and he is a big fan of Hemingway and Don Carlos. So for me asking the question, it's like yesterday when I put up my post on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. I put up 3 cigars, a Don Carlos, an Opus X, and an Añejo. And I asked people, I haven't spoken for 33 days. What, if you really know me, tell me what cigar. So 80% of the people said Don Carlos Personal Reserve. And the other 2 were 2 great cigars, an Opus X Shark and an Añejo, but people know me.
Don Carlos is the one.
Jose, that's why we got to play tandem here. We have each other's back. So that question was the obvious one, and I certainly know that it's your favorite, Jose. Arnold, you're fond of the tobacco like so many other people. Even though it's so challenging to A, come by and B, work with it successfully, right? Because it's just such a delicate, but man, what an incredibly complex and
It's
incredible
great.
to work with.
One last
You know
thing.
who was a big fan of that
Excuse
is
me, Arnold, excuse me a
go
minute.
ahead.
I got to get, sorry, I just have to get on a call right now. They're calling me. But I didn't want to just cut out. Arnold, thanks for being on the show. Reinhard, thanks for having
Thanks.
Arnaldo.
Thank you.
I kind of like him a little bit, not a lot. But I'll mooch a couple of cigars at the show.
I'm growing on you, though.
I know, because I've said I'm the biggest moocher around. I don't mooch boxes. It's only 1 or 2 cigars. But all the best, Arnaldo, everybody on the
Thank you,
show
Jose.
tonight. Great seeing you, everybody. And everybody
It
who
was a
gave
pleasure.
me, who said a post of prayer and thoughts for me. I appreciate it. My family appreciates you. God bless you all. All the best.
Be
Good
well, my
night,
friend.
you guys. Thank
Yes.
you. Good night.
Thank you. Take care, Jose.
Bless you, Jose.
Thank you,
Arnold,
guys.
True gentleman.
Very true.
I try.
Class act, man.
Arnold, you had one point that you wanted to mention.
Oh, I was just going to say that back in the day, Ramon Cifuentes from Partagas, huge fan of the Cameroon wrapper, man. He was like so into it, I've got a box, believe it or not, of Partagas 150s from like the 90s with the Cameroon wrapper, and I've been aging it for many, many years, and I hold on to it because it's like a treasure trove. And it was one of the one of the last boxes that he made when he was working for General Cigar.
Arnold, one final question, one final point that I'm curious about is the price point of cigars in general. We've seen a lot of manufacturers recently try and venture more into the real upper echelon of the price range. We've also seen new brands come to the market with a very substantial and very high price point. And obviously, we all know of the economical challenges that we see all around the world. We see price increases throughout many different industries. Where do you think that sweet spot truly lies, in particular for your brand, when it comes to pricing the cigars and making sure that you can serve people from all walks of life with different budgets?
Sure.
Where's that sweet spot for you?
Well, it's funny because we've got cigars in here, believe it or not. Our budget ones, they retail from anywhere between $3 to $4. That's the lower end ones, right? But like my father used to say, those are the ones that keep the lights on in this place, right? But now that we're doing the premium cigars, obviously those retail between 12 and up. But believe it or not, the sweet spot, $7 to $9. And we still give people a very good quality product on some of the brands at that price. And I feel like the consumers, not even here, just in general, they really do love the $7 to $9 price point. I mean, I think there was an article in Cigar Aficionado this past month about that, and it talks about that same price point, $7 to $9.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like once, like Jose said earlier, once you get into that $15 and up price range, I mean, I like to call that enemy territory, to be honest with you. But if you do end up selling those cigars, you better be giving somebody something really, really impressive. You know what I mean? At least here in the States. I know in Europe everything is much more money, but I feel like the beautiful or the sweet spot, like you said, is $7 to $9.
Do you feel that that recent trend of manufacturers going more into that true top super premium segment will purvey, or do you rather think that people will become more sensitive when it comes to pricing and eventually look for that true value for money cigar?
Reinhardt, I think there's different people there's different customers for different cigars. You know what I mean? Like I feel like if you put out a product like that, that's north of let's say $15, they're going to be a high dollar cigar, but it's going to attract a different clientele as well. And more people are going to be buying it, and as far as like a luxury product, like a good wine, you know what I mean, or a good champagne. But I feel like there's a market for everything, really. But people that have the money, they're not going to shy away from buying it. You know what I'm saying? People that feel more comfortable buying the $7 to $9 ones, again, they're entitled to having a good quality product as well.
Yeah.
And there's also a market for that too.
Arnold, it's been a tremendous pleasure to have you on the show and to share those precious 90 minutes with you. A wonderful
pleasure's been mine.
lesson, taking us down memory lane, as Jose said.
Thank you.
Exploring some of Tampa's rich history and legacy in cigar manufacturing. And kudos to you. And I take my hat off to you for continuing and perpetuating that legacy and tradition with class and style and elegance and a lot of fitness. So please keep doing what you're doing. We wish you all the very best, tremendous success, and above all,
thank you so much.
Lots of joy and pleasure with what you're doing.
I hope to see you around here or in Europe or somewhere. We'll see each other.
I certainly look forward to that. Latest in July at the trade show.
That'd be great.
Then hopefully in Tampa and around very soon when I get to visit you and come and
I look forward to it.
Cigar with you in your little boutique and the factory.
My little piece of paradise. Have you had a chance to smoke any of them yet or no?
I'm still waiting for the perfect moment. I want to give them a bit of rest and let them relax and calm down after the travel. But I very much look forward to, and maybe there's an opportunity for us to either jump on the Zoom and share a cigar and smoke it together.
Awesome.
And then latest we'll do that at the trade show.
Reinhard, thank you. And once again, thank you for having me on the show. It's been a pleasure to be here, and I've really enjoyed my time here tonight with you.
It was such a privilege, Arnold. Thanks for everything that you shared with us. It's greatly appreciated, and I feel much needed because more people need to learn about those intricacies and the history. People need to learn and understand where we came from, and as Jose always said, who brought us to the dance and what brought us to the dance. And
that's right.
I'm truly grateful that you do that with all your endeavors and how you keep that flame alive.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Arnold Serafin from Serafin de Cuba and Flor de Tampa. It's been a pleasure. All the very best to all of you guys. Stay with us. Stay tuned. Please join us again next week. We have the tremendous pleasure of welcoming, and I think that's a rare opportunity. We will have a tobacco grower and a small manufacturer from Cuba joining us next week. One of the few gentlemen in Cuba who promised to have stable Wi-Fi connection and steady internet. But we will talk about all the intricacies and the details and the challenges and hurdles of growing tobacco and rolling cigars still to this very day in Cuba. So that's going to be a very, very interesting show, and I look forward to it. And then just a week after, we'll have Tim Osgener of Osgener Family Cigars joining us. So stay tuned.
That's great.
Please come back next week, same time, same station here at the Light 'em Up Lounge. Until then, all of you stay safe, stay healthy, enjoy great cigars, and always light 'em up. Thanks, everybody. Goodbye for now.
Bye-bye, Reinhard. Thank you.
Have a good night. Thank you.
You as well, sir.